When the internet began, bulletin board services, or BBS, became the first online communities of the so-called information superhighway. Using their phone lines, people logged in from all over America to talk about sports, games, movies, and on one BBS in particular, share their ghost stories. Over time, those communities all went dark, except for one lone server that continues to operate somewhere in an unknown part of Pennsylvania's Rust Belt. A relic of the 1990s, veiled in mystery, it is a digital archive of humanity's strangest encounters with the unknown, as told by the people who experienced them. My name is Brandon Schexnayder, and you are listening to Fear Daily.
Subject, Walter. User, CX12Anon. Posted, December 22nd, 1997.
Traveling in the winter has never been something I've enjoyed. Many of my friends like to take ski trips with their families or even rent out cabins in the country so they can spend Christmas soaking in a hot tub under the stars. More power to them. Being that I'm single, they used to invite me along, a practice it took several years' worth of no thank you to put an end to. It wasn't always like this. My husband Walter and I used to be Christmas at the cabin types too. It was a lovely little spot, a 2-bedroom with a gabled roof and big porch for cozy nighttime hot chocolates. The two of us wrapped in blankets. We were headed here in winter 1990 when the accident happened. It was the sort of thing that can hit any time, anywhere, and yet you never think it'll be you. About halfway between home and the cabin, there's a long straight stretch leading to a sharp left curve. After that, you cross a green single-lane bridge. Walter was driving, going a little faster than I'd have liked, when we hit a section of the road that was pure black ice. To make the corner up ahead and not crash into the steel barrier behind it, we needed to be going about half the speed we were. He pumped the brakes to no effect. We were still skidding toward the turn. Time seemed to slow down, and I could see every detail of the scene in front of us. Slushy white and brown hillocks of snow along the roadside, rounded rivets punched into the green steel of the bridge, the black, churning river underneath. I had enough time to reason that if we could just angle ourselves enough to hit the railing side on, it might be able to absorb our impact. It wasn't going to happen. Walter, bless him, always insisted on driving, but he was not good at making quick decisions and wasn't going to course correct us in time. We were headed straight at the barrier, meaning the Buick would easily punch through, carrying us into the river below. The time dilation almost made the actual impact an anticlimax, given how long it felt it had taken to finally get there. We lurched, our windshield spiderwebbing immediately, obscuring the world in front of us as our momentum carried the car over the embankment. Our final crash into that icy black water jarred time back to its normal flow. The front of the car went deep into the river, springing back up several feet after the rear end splashed down, but staying canted forward. Panic tried to claw its way up to my throat, making me want to thrash and kick. I pushed it back down with everything I had. If I let it take over, we were both dead. Wait, we? I looked over at Walter. He was lolling forward in his seat, blood covering his face. I shook his shoulder, hearing him moan weakly. We were bobbing crazily in the river, swept downstream by the current. I felt cold seeping into my shoes and looked down to see water beginning to pool in the footwells. "Walter, you have to wake up. We need to get out of here." Shoulder a second time. He moaned again, then nothing. I I noticed a wide, sticky patch of blood on the hardest part of the steering wheel and understood why he was so out of it. Walter was almost 100 pounds heavier than me. I wasn't sure I could get him out of here on my own, and we needed to go, now. The water level had already gone from mid-door to just underneath the window. We were sinking fast. I twisted to look at him. Something was restraining me, and I fought against it for a moment before realizing it was my seatbelt. Thankfully, it opened with a single click, and I was able to focus on my husband. "Walter, please, get the fuck up." This time, there wasn't even a moan. I started fumbling with his seatbelt, frantically pressing the steel buckle. It wouldn't budge. The footwell was full up to my ankles now. Outside, the river lapped up over the windshield. My feet were starting to go numb. No matter what I did, Walter's seatbelt would not open. I needed something to cut it with. I yanked open the glove box, paper spilling out into the rising water. Behind them, I found 2 old pairs of sunglasses and Walter's stash of gummy bears he thought I didn't know about. Fuck, all this junk in here and none of it useful. Walter stirred in his seat, his voice thick with confusion. "Liz?" I leaned over to him. "I'm here, Walter. Your seatbelt is stuck. I can't get it open. You have to think, is there a knife anywhere in the car? Anything sharp at all we can use to cut you out?" He gently shook his head, the movement forcing a groan of pain from him. Suddenly, it wasn't just cold in the car, but dark as well. The windshield was fully submerged. My thighs were underwater. I put my hand on his neck. He was ice cold, his heartbeat rapid and shallow. "Walter, the car is sinking. The cabin is almost half full. We have to get you out of here." His lips were moving, the sound faint. I leaned closer, the words finally becoming clear. "I love you. Go." Over and over until his lips stopped moving. A sob rose in me, but there wasn't time to let it out. The cabin was full up to my chest. If I was going to go, it had to be now. I gave my husband one last look, his thick, black hair, his soft lips, the checked green shirt and sweater I called his Mr. Rogers outfit. I tried to fix the image in my mind. If I had to leave him, I would never let myself forget a single detail. Closing my eyes, I took a deep, trembling breath in an attempt to slow my racing heart. Then, my eyes open, I cracked down the passenger side window, frigid water pouring in to fill the empty space. I took a single last breath as the car went under. My eyes stung. Everything was black. I wriggled out through the window, kicking hard against the car in an attempt to drive myself toward what I hoped was the surface. For a moment, I remembered the trip we'd taken to Maui the year before, how I'd been caught in a riptide and almost dragged out to sea. Walter had saved me, shouted at me from the beach, telling me to swim parallel to the shore rather than toward it. I'd kicked and kicked, eventually breaking free. Under the river's surface, my chest was starting to burn from lack of oxygen. Summoning the last of my energy, I swam as hard as I could at an angle to the current, feeling myself make some headway. Suddenly, there was light. 2 separate spots weaving above me, just out of reach. My legs stopped cooperating, then my arms. My chest spasmed, forcing me to inhale a lungful of river water. The world went away. Next thing I knew, I was laying on my side, vomiting water. A soothing voice told me I was safe. Someone brought me a blanket, wrapping me up in warmth. It allowed me, just for a moment, to pretend I was on the cabin porch, and Walter was just about to come through the door, holding 2 cups of cocoa.
Subject: The Wild. User: GLTT. Posted August 18, 1998.
Maybe if I wasn't so tired or I hadn't driven this road so many times, I'd have appreciated the view more. Even with the moon hidden behind clouds, there's a certain majesty to driving alone through frost-covered fields on a glossy ribbon of blacktop. My problem was that I'd been up since 6 a.m., made the 5-hour return trip to Chicago for a supervised visit with my kids, then fought with my ex and her fucking lawyer for no other reason than they knew it would wear me out. To make it all worse, the only thing I had to look forward to in the morning was another day of work. My shoulders ached at the thought. Living in Indiana had always been my ex's idea. Trudy and I met in design school, and from the way she dressed, shot whiskey, and swore like a landlocked sailor, you wouldn't have guessed she was a rich kid. The dashboard clock on my crumbling Tempo said it was 10 p.m. as I sped through ice-cold farmland. Open fields were gradually being clotted up by stands of heavy, dark trees, drawing shadows around them like a cloak. It was becoming so thick that my headlights seemed dimmer. I shook my head and kept my eyes on the road, remembering back to that night when my life changed forever. For a year, True had waved off any question about her background more in depth than "Where are you from?" Until the night when, without any warning or preamble, she let me in. It was Valentine's Day. We were too broke, or at least I was, to pay the overinflated restaurant prices, so we drank wine and celebrated together, eventually ending up naked and exhausted under a heavy blanket on the floor of my cramped apartment. Out of nowhere, True told me that there was something she hadn't been honest about, and I thought she was going to tell me she had a kid or something. There was no way I could have guessed that she was about to tell me she'd given our school and me a fake last name because her real one was too recognizable. Recognizable is putting it mildly. When she told me who she really was, I felt a rush of hot blood flood to my face. Even a lowly art major knew her family. It knew they were from the kind of money that hid behind stone walls and tinted windows while controlling vast chunks of the Midwest, from Chicago to Midland. I felt a momentary panic at the irrational thought that enforcers in black suits were about to kick down my door and cave in my skull for some of the things True and I had done on the floor over the last year. But no one broke down the door. Instead, she told me everything about her life that had been held back. True said she was done with them, their control, their power over every part of her life. Their theatrics, she said, were the only thing worse than the subtle social pressures they placed on her. The expectation that she live up to the family name by attending events where their kind of people can see and be seen. Going to design college instead of the same Ivy League hellholes that had educated her parents and siblings had been her first stab at independence. Looking back, I suppose fucking a middling talented graphic designer had been her second. At the time, all I could think was that I loved her and wanted to protect her however I could. Even years later, after everything, I was still filled with an infuriating warmth when I thought about how she felt pressed against me in that moment. As shadows gathered around my car, it was all too easy to think this was some nightmare that would soon draw to a close, and I'd wake up back under that blanket with the woman I loved, that she hadn't turned into a stranger who looked at me with unearned disgust. True wanted to get away from it all, especially from the city where her family had people everywhere. The simple life appealed to her. Kids, dogs, a farmhouse on some land outside a small town where everyone knew your name. I'd never imagined myself as a father, but looking into those big green eyes, I was only too happy to agree. The more she described her dream, the more my heart swelled as I imagined myself at the center of it. The two of us holding hands and growing old together on a porch swing. The next day, I quit my program, and within a month, we were renting a house outside Elkhart, Indiana. Our first son, Lane, arrived 8 months later. He was 2 when his brother Ian was born. Even though I hadn't finished my degree, what little I had learned made it slightly easier for me to find work in a furniture shop. Even if it wasn't the Chicago or Midland graphic design firm I'd envisioned, it meant I got to come home to my beautiful wife and family. When True began to grow distant in the months after Ian was born, I chalked it up to postpartum and did what I could to bridge the gap. Still, no matter how far I extended the olive branch, how much of the household load I took on in addition to work, she continued to withdraw, becoming icy and cutting. Some days, I hardly recognized her. I came home on a Wednesday night to find her car gone from the driveway and the house quiet. A curt note on the kitchen table filled in the rest. True had had enough of our pitiful, small life and taken the boys back to her family. I didn't know what to do, so I sat on the cold porch swing until dawn. The months that followed were a blur. Phone calls with lawyers I couldn't afford who told me that the legal might of her family was such that I'd have better luck faking my own death and starting again in Costa Rica than I would fighting back. There was no hope of getting the boys full-time. At best, I could have bi-weekly supervised visitations on Sunday, no doubt chosen because True knew I worked Monday, and this would be maximally inconvenient. I was drawn out of my reflection by the realization that the odometer on my dash wasn't moving. No matter how much further my headlights carved into the darkness, which had settled on the countryside, the Odo's digits refused to move. I snorted. It seemed appropriate. True would say I'd killed it inside by trying to make it live a life it never really wanted. When she declared that to me in a custody hearing, wearing a tailored gray suit, her hair expertly styled, it cut in to the deepest part of me. She'd been the one who wanted to move to the sticks, to get away. I said that at the time, and the little flicker it caused in her big green eyes, a flash of sadness and regret before indignity slammed back into place, was the worst thing that could have happened to me. It put in me the thought that the woman I loved was still somewhere in there. Was there, I wondered, some combination of words and circumstances that could bring her back out? The tempo sputtered, like the thought had strained its own credulity past the breaking point. Its engine strained even as acceleration slowed, headlights dimming. With one final emphatic pop, the car went dark, and having lost power steering, I wrestled the wheel until I coasted onto the gravel shoulder. It was deathly silent, inside the car and out. Even after having made this trip for several months, between losing the odometer and an unnatural darkness obscuring everything more than an arm's length away from the car, I had no idea where I was. How long had it been since I'd seen another car, I wondered. Long enough I couldn't remember, though how long that had actually been was anyone's guess. I'd spent the entire drive so far up in my head that time had completely gotten away from me. It didn't take long for that time to catch up or the temperature inside the car to drop. I didn't have a cell phone, but I did have a winter emergency kit in my trunk. Steeling myself against what I knew was going to be biting cold, even compared to the inside of the car, I took a breath and pushed open my door. Whatever I'd steeled myself for, it wasn't enough. It was as if the shadows themselves emitted a deep freeze which seeped right through my clothes. Why was it so goddamn dark? I'd seen cloudy, moonless nights on this highway, just never like this. I drew my coat around me, shivering as I walked back to the Tempo's trunk. It popped open with a metallic groan. I reached inside for the heavy woolen blanket and chemical heating pads I kept in there for just such an occasion. As I wrapped the blanket around me, two sounds happened in quick succession. First, a crunching sound behind me, like movement across frozen ground. I stiffened and wheeled around to see something I could barely comprehend. A nude man, his body withered and gray, veins straining against paper-thin skin. Atop its heavily corded neck, a stag's head, its eye sockets empty yet somehow alive, leered at me. Before I could react, the second sound arrived, a deep rumbling which seemed to be coming from everywhere, as if the air itself were quaking. The abomination craned its terrible head skyward, and I followed it. Starting in the east, a line of fire seemed to burn its way across the entire night sky. The flame was so brilliant, I had to shade my eyes. Trailing behind it was something even more incomprehensible than the predatory creature in front of me, which was now cowering in fear, emitting an ear-splitting squeal. A line of black riders, distant and godlike, thundered overhead on horses whose hooves glowed with an unearthly blue light. The otherworldly gloom obscuring my view of the countryside seemed to be swept away by the horde's advance, leaving only the usual darkness of a winter night. The gnarled, eyeless thing which had frightened me earlier, only moments before, was now running away, its two long legs pumping determinedly in a doomed attempt to stay ahead of the celestial cavalry. Seconds later, it was blown away into the distance as if by a shockwave, and the apocalyptic show was over. Riders vanishing over the far horizon as if they'd never been there at all. Not long after that, a pair of headlights approached in the distance. All I could do was stand there dumbly, draped in a heavy woolen blanket, and stick out my thumb.
Fear Daily is an independent podcast hosted by Brandon Schexnayder and written by Brennan Storr, with Joanna Smith serving as the consulting editor, audio production by Rachel Boyd, and sound design by Southern Gothic Media. This podcast is a work of fiction. Names, characters, places, and incidents are either products of the author's imagination or are used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or to real events or locations, is entirely coincidental. Ad-free versions of Fear Daily are available now on your favorite podcast apps. For more information, visit feardaily.com. But move fast, before the server goes offline.